Hello and welcome once again to another live of a reading of John James Hissey and The Charm of the Road, and I'm reading it again. The second chapter. I have here my hat, my scarf, because we're going to be going in a vehicle and heading off round the country. So you're going to need to be warm because it's cold. I'm wrapped up. I actually have a blanket around my waist and my legs because on this motor car it is open to the elements, as I'm sure you'll be aware, and it can be quite cold. So hopefully everything's all right. The lovely Julia is out there, which is grand. Right, so let me just change a few settings here. I want to pop out the chat so I can keep an eye on that, and hopefully that's okay. I don't know where that's gone now. I've just dropped it. There it is. I probably don't need that bit. We'll leave that going. So you can comment. I'll try to read it, the comments as I go. We also have our maps on the ready. I say that. Where are they? Well, I did have them. Oh, now they've vanished. Oh, wait a minute. I know where they are. I've put them in... Stupidly, I've put them in a different place. There's one there and one across here. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, now I've lost it. Dear. I thought I would be more organised this time. I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen. So let's just get this first map here. This is the old maps. And I want to be able to look at that. We're down here. This is, I'm not quite sure where we are. Ashburton or Ashburnham or some Burnham, I think it was. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a minute. And Google Maps we want on here. Where is Google Maps? We'll have that ready so that we can see what it looks like in modern times. Coffee at the ready. I've got this blanket here, which I just need to tuck around me because the studio is cold. It's hello. Are we I've just had a message come up. Are we still streaming? You'll have to let me know if we suddenly disappear. Right. I think we're okay. Right, here we are. Chapter 2 on this. Welcome aboard. Of course, you can just fast forward all these nonsense bits. Now, I just want to move... Hang on a minute. I want to move my keyboard out the way so that I can actually put the book in a better place so that we can read nicely. Okie dokie. Right, Chapter 2. Strolling now, where were we? We were in Ashburnham. I can't remember exactly. I think that's where we were. I just need to try and find where it was. Ashburnham. Okay. Strolling down the lane in search of any special picturesque bit to sketch or photograph, I unexpectedly came upon a tramp, comfortably reclining at ease on a grassy bank and in the shade of an overhanging tangled hedge. You don't see many of these tramps these days, do you? It's a shame. A tramp, I thought, in search of work, and with so little strain in the search that he can lie idle half the day or more in blissful contentment. While I got close to him, I noticed he was munching a dry crust of bread. This I could not choose but see. I should have passed him by without a word, for I have been so taken in with the plausible and pathetic tales that various tramps have poured into my unwilling ears, to the parting with many good pence of the realm, that I long ago made the determination never to listen to their tales of invented woe again. But this tramp did not beg, as is the custom of his tribe. He merely bade me in a quiet voice, "Good day," and, not to be less civil than he, I returned his salutation. What a nice thing to do. And if I can turn 2 pages at once, of course I shall. I know not how it was, but having intended to pass him by unregarded, I stopped myself there in front of him. For a tramp, he was clean of face, and though his clothes were much patched and shabby, they were not excessively dirty. His hair was grey, he had clear blue eyes, he had a gentle voice with no whine about it. So there I stopped, though half ashamed to witness him dining off a dry crust. "Come from far?" I queried. He looked up and smilingly replied, "Not very far, only 10 miles or so. I'm not so young as I was, and a long tramp tires me. It's such a lovely day, I thought I would take it easy. Besides, work don't suit my constitution, and why should a man work if it injures his health? A crust of bread and a drink of water is all I need, and somewhere to sleep at night. I don't ask much of the world. Man lives but once, and why should he spoil the pleasure of living by work if he can manage without it?" Which actually is a very good point. If you can manage without work, then that does sound like a very sensible thing. Let's have another slurp. Delicious. Truly, this tramp was refreshingly original and strangely frank. He didn't beg nor claim my pity. Instead of the usual query with the view of raising a stranger's sympathy and in hopes of extracting a copper or two, if I knew anyone who would give him a job, he boldly proclaimed that he did not want work. A lazy fellow, manifestly, yet he interested me, and as he appeared inclined to be communicative, I stopped and listened to his talk on the chance of gleaning something of the real life of a tramp. "'Tis a bit lonely at times," he confessed, "is tramping about the country, but I love the free life. A tramp has nothing to lose, not even character. I should be perfectly happy if I'd had a wife for a companion, but then perhaps she would want to talk too much. You never know what a woman's like till you've married her, and then it's too late." Then he dived his hand into his pocket and produced a crumpled cutting from some old newspaper headed, "A Tramp's Ideal Wife." "I tore that out of a London paper the other day," he said. "It's an opinion of a brother tramp about a wife. Perhaps you'd like to see it." I was a little doubtful about handing the dirty newspaper scrap, but curiosity prevailed over my disinclination, and this is what I read. A tramp, in giving his opinions about a wife to our correspondent, states, "She should be an all-round woman, not good-looking, or she might run away with someone else, but she must be temperate. If there is any drinking to be done, I can see to that. She should be able to walk about 20 miles a day and be good at begging bottles and food. If she can sing a bit, so much the better. Singing hymns or ballads bring coppers. She must not mind what people say, and she should be able to fight a round or two and defend her husband when in action." Blimey, how about that? As he chatted on, the tramp became quite confidential. He even confessed that he had never done a day's work in his life, and never intended to. He was a lazy scamp, but a civil one, and astonishingly candid. He owned that the profession was a bit overdone, but things are not as good as they used to be in other walks of life. Though a tramp, he was manifestly a character, and his quaintness and civility earned him sixpence. Money that doubtless might have been better expended, but it was not openly begged for from me. The gift was received with dignified thanks and a remark, "It will be useful." I escaped, as I expected, the usual following blessing, for which omission I respected the champ, who, having carefully pocketed the coin, put aside his crust, remarking, "Now I'll have a smoke." Have you anything such as a match about you? My little stock is almost done, and a tramp has to be careful about the trifles. Yes. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting. I'm just going to pause there because I noticed that we've only got one viewer, and I don't even know whether the stream is working. So maybe if the lovely Julia is still watching, you can tell me whether we are still... Oh, we've got 3 concurrent watchers, and we're still going, if that's all right. One never quite knows. I thought I'd just try this live at 5 o'clock, thinking there might be a few more people wanting to pop in and have a little listen, although the main thing is that people can go and have a gander later on. The main thing is to get the thing recorded in the spare time that I have, which these days is not so much, and often if it is spare, I'm usually quite tired from, the glare of the lights. Anyway, let's have another swig. Yum. And we'll get back to our driving round the country. Thanks to Julia for letting me know we're still live. As I was going on my way, a suspicion came over me that the munching of that crust was only a pretence, an ingenious and subtle method of begging, likely to appeal to the simple-minded and charitable passer-by. A glance at the crust as it lay on the grass bank confirmed my suspicions, for the crumb portion of it looked hard and dirty, as though it had not been in any way broken that day. For the moment I felt a little annoyed at having been so easily taken in, so much so that I even ventured boldly to reproach the tramp for having played a trick upon me. He calmly and coolly owned up to the fact, without showing any sign of shame. "It's a dodge of the profession," he explained with a smile. "I always carries an old crust about me and pulls it out my pocket and pretends to gnaw at it when I see a likely party coming along. I saw your car, and I was expecting that perhaps you would pass my way. It pays a lot better than direct begging. Begging is about playing out. Besides, the police are so nasty about it, and you never know who you're begging from. Once I begged of a kind-looking gentleman, and bless me if he wasn't a magistrate, and I got into trouble over the job. Perfect fraud he was. Why the tramp chose to confide in me, I cannot say. He actually appeared to be enjoying his impudent confessions, for he smiled all the while and puffed at his broken bit of black clay pipe. The very picture of idle contentment. A humorous scamp with a cunning actor. Why he chose that deserted road for his exploits puzzled me, but I did not feel inclined to discuss matters further. Presumably he knew his business better than I. At any rate, so far it had not been altogether unsuccessful thereon, and a proof of a good business locality is the takings thereof. That tramp, I felt assured, in spite of his statement, had a soul above a crust of bread and plain water. Thank you very much for Old Crow for joining me. We're reading The Charm of the Road to get us through these cold wintry nights here in the UK. You might be in a different part of the world, of course. Based in around I think this is 1908 when he went out, published in 1910. Whilst on the subject of tramps, I may here relate another experience of mine with one of the Brotherhood. A certain evening I arrived at the inn of a country town, and whilst dismounting from the car, I like that, whilst dismounting from the car. Who talks about, we get out of the car these days, don't we? But who dismounts? It's a nice old-fashioned car. I need to find out what kind of car it is, and maybe he'll tell us a little bit later on. Anyway, whilst dismounting from the car, was accosted by a weary-looking and dusty tramp who told me, and so artfully, such a tale of woe that I felt I could not get into that comfortable hostelry and enjoy my meal, leaving a starving fellow being outside, for he declared that he had not tasted food that day and was faint with hunger, and he had so miserable an appearance that I felt genuinely sorry for him, even to the extent of 2 shillings. I further felt a sense of having done a good deed, which, for a time, added to my happiness. Later on during the evening, when it was dark, I took a quiet stroll around the town, and to my utter astonishment, that very tramp accosted me again, manifestly not recognising who I was. Divested of my motoring overcoat and goggles, he repeated his same old tale of woe in the same put-on, pitiful and pleading voice, that he had not tasted food that day, nor has the soul in all of Christian land as much as given me a copper to buy a crust of bread with. What I said to that sublimely impudent and mendacious tramp will not bear repeating here, and he actually had the audacity to beg my pardon, adding, "Oh, I had no idea as to how you were the same party I spoke to before. 'Tis the first time I have made such a mistake." And with that, he coolly walked off. I bet he did. Absolutely extraordinary. Anyway, I've lost my space now. This is an unvarnished statement of what took place. Now, I no longer weep over tramps. I leave that for foolish, though tender-hearted folk to do so. By my callousness I am robbed of many a blessing, but I have never found a tramp's blessing to bring any reward with it. For those who dream otherwise, it can generally be for the small expenditure of twopence. According to my experience of the tribe, a penny merely produces thanks, but anything over that amount ensures a blessing. For sixpence, not only have I secured a personal blessing, but one that extended to my whole family. Leaving Ashburnham, we soon came to a land of fragrance, quietness, and trees, for presently our road led us through the heart of the forest of pointed pines. With Belloc I might sing, "I never get between the pines, but I smell the Sussex air." Now and then, through the pillared recesses, or pillared, I suppose it is, pillared recesses, we caught long vistas like the aisles of some fairy cathedral, barred with shafts of golden sunshine and long lines of blue-grey shadows. The air was filled with pine trees, resinous odours quickened by the warm sunshine. Nowhere, I think, the same distance of London, and the other one. Nowhere, I think, within the same distance of London can one find such glorious and wild forest scenery as beautifies the hills of Sussex, where the kindly southern climate adds an added wealth of colour to the woods. Here and there one stately tree uprose upon the rest, and seemed fitted to be the mast of some great admiral, did only fighting ships of today need such masts. I'm sure that masts were not made of pine. I don't think that would be very strong, would it? Even though the pine grows quite straight. But there we are. Do say hello if you are here in the chat. It's very nice to have you around. I'm just putting the top chat on. Top chat, that's the leader of the gang. Then, as we journeyed on, we left the woods behind and found ourselves in a sequestered country, wide and open to the sky, a wild and lonely upland, very restful in its loneliness and silence, and in the feeling of being far from anywhere. There are stretches of Sussex as wild and as secluded as the traveller in search of solitude can desire, though it is a friendly and not though it is a friendly and not the forbidding solitude of the rugged mountain. England is not yet all tamed and cultivated. This 110 years ago, he says this. It has been said that Thoreau found the freedom of the wilderness within the sound of Emerson's dinner bell. We also often found the freedom of the wilderness within a stroll of our road, when well away from towns. Solitude, to my mind, is the most to be appreciated when you have a sympathetic companion by your side, though not a spoken word be said, only the presence felt, and a motor car ready to whisk you away before it becomes depressing. I enjoy my solitude best in silent company. Wait a minute, he just said it's the best is most appreciated when you've got a sympathetic companion. But then he goes on to contradict himself and says, I enjoy my solitude best in silent company. Oh, I suppose when the person doesn't say anything. And without wishing to disdain humanity, I prefer a dog to any other companion when in the wilderness. Lamb, gentle Lamb, had a positive hatred of wild nature. "Oh!" exclaimed he to a friend whilst tramping disconsolately one day over the desolate Cumberland fells. "Oh, for a glimpse of a human face and the grasp of a human hand!" He knew not the bliss of solitude that meant so much to Wordsworth and is so peace-bestowing to those who have been for so long in close, unsympathetic contact with the commonplace, uninspired crowd. Are you... Welcome to the live chat. Remember, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I just thought that was a massage, you know. In towns, one rarely has any time to think or to call one's soul one's own. There are so many disturbing details. The weary hum and strife of life is ever present and insistent. This, again, 110 years ago, it's interesting when he talks about how busy communal place, everyday life is. And then we think, blimey, how would you cope in the crowded and noisy atmosphere of today with the telephones ringing and the televisions blaring and all of that sort of nonsense? And the thundering sound of transport. I mean, it must have been lovely in those halcyon days when very few people drove. Anyway, only in the real country, removed from the busy hives of men, may one truly realise the thought that is within one. It is a tonic, both for the brain and body, to be at times alone with the good green earth and the silent sky above. More peaceful than the walled seclusion of the monastery are the green recesses of the woods and hills, where rural Pan and his friendly fellow gods were wont to hide themselves in those far-off days when the world was blithe and young. To quote Rousseau again, "I am," he said, "never so near heaven as when I'm alone with nature." And Rousseau was no religionist, being all his life at daggers drawn with dogma. These cheerful Sussex solitudes and their illusions of remoteness possess a wonderful power to charm and soothe the town-tired soul. A genuine love of nature lightens the troubled heart of mind, but as Joaquin Miller says, "You cannot come to love the beautiful in a day, or to understand nature utterly after having forgotten her from your birth." Nature, like a modest maiden, is not to be won by a hasty glance. She needs a long and constant wooing. True and lasting love of her comes alone of knowledge, but once gained, it grows as certainly as grows a river flowing to the sea. Isn't that nice? However, the English wayfarer cannot for long escape from man's handiwork. The marks and sounds of civilization meet the eye and greet the ear at changeful intervals as he journeys on. So presently, on an elevated bit of rough grassy ground before us, we espied a tall, round, pyramidal structure. This, from its isolated and prominent position, we took to be an important landmark, though to our surprise we could find no record of it on our Ordnance Survey map. Oh yes, that was the other thing. Oh no, I've got the Ordnance Survey map, if only I know where we are. Then a countryman appeared, approaching the car, the only human that we had set eyes on since leaving Ashburnham. So forsaken are some parts of populous England. We asked him the purpose of this structure. It was a fortunate meeting, as without it we should have missed a bit of curious local history. TW says hello, and hello to Julia. We are well, thank you very much. It's nice to see you. Now, this is interesting because I've been here and I've made videos of this. He said, be the Sugarloaf House. It was built a long while back by the mad squire, but when he built it, he could get no one to live in it. The mad squire, we inquired. Pray, who is he? Why, came the reply, you must surely be a stranger hereabouts not to heard of him. But them motor cars, of course, travel far, and some come from foreign parts to be sure. This is the sugar loaf. I'm going to go and find a better picture of it. And then I'm going to try and find it on the map to show you where it is. Because Julia and I have been there, of course. Let's just grab the old keyboard here, and we will do this together. Sugar loaf, Sussex, folly. For it is a folly. Let's have a little gander here and put it on the screen for you. So here's a good picture. Let's open that in a new tab and have a look at it in more detail. Oh, and that's the small picture. Okay, it does open up into a big one. We'll do that again. Sometimes it doesn't always. Try that. Let's do it this way. Open image in new tab. There it is. Look at that. And that picture does seem to be, it's a black and white old picture. It sort of references where we are. You walk down, there's this pathway just here. I don't know if you can see that. And you walk round it. Let's see if we can find some more pictures of it for you. This is, of course, Mad Jack's Sugarloaf Folly. If I come down here, you'll see a little bit more about that. But we'll go back up again just so that we can see more photographs. This is what it looks like from the front. And we've been there. We've made videos in and around that when Julia and I made videos. And I made something called Oddball Eccentrics at some time in the long distance past. So now that is... Now let me see if it will come up on Google Street Map. Sugar Loaf Folly. It's at It's just off near Brightlington. Oh, it does come up. Here we go. You can't see much from the road. Let's have a look. Quick look. Here's the road. We parked our van here, and then you walk down to it. Let's so you can't really see it. Hang on. I wonder if let's just go back there again and go up that way and see if... There it is, look, in the distance. There it is. And the... well, he's probably explain it in the book, so I don't want to give away why it came about. Let's come back here and just have a... There it is. I parked my car there, or van. There's a big field here, and the Sugarloaf is just there. And it looks like the old way that sugar was delivered in a conical shape in the ye olde days. And Brightlington is up here, and the house... Here we go, Brightlington, the church, and the manor house is round here somewhere. The mausoleum of Mad Jack, which is a pyramid. Anyway, let's see what he says in the book. You see, this is what I like about these old books, travelling around. Now, this happens to be a place that I know the area of. However, as we go on, he's going to travel to all sorts of places, and I won't know. But he's done quite a bit of driving so far. This is still in Sussex. So he says that by foreign parts, the Sussex narrative generally means another county or another country, not necessarily another country. I heard of a Heathfield labourer who removed himself and his family to another spot of the Sussex, some dozen miles away. However, he soon returned to his native place, giving his reasons that he was tired of foreign parts. But our query as to who the mad squire was remained unanswered, so we repeated. "Oh," came the reply, "he was Jack Fuller, as was. Honest Jack Fuller, he called himself, but the folk round here called him the Mad Squire. He's buried at Brightling Church over there," pointing indefinitely into space. When alive, he built a big stone tomb for himself like one of them Egyptian pyramids, and he gave orders after his body was laid there that the key of the door should be destroyed so the devil could not get at him. He were a funny sort of man, he were, but a good sort all the same, they do say. Now, I do have a book downstairs somewhere, a yellow book, beautifully written and illustrated about Mad Jack Fuller, about his life, and I did read it. It was some couple of years ago now. After I returned home, I hunted up the history of the eccentric Sussex squire, and discovered that he was elected for MP in the county in 1807, and often caused roars of laughter in the House, as in the House of Commons, by his quaint speeches. Once he fell foul of the Speaker, whom he scornfully termed an insignificant little man in a big wig. He had a mania for building, and amongst many curiosities he caused to be erected, besides the quaint Sugarloaf House, was a temple in his park, which he christened Solomon's Temple. To this he would retire at times to meditate. He also caused a big stone, I'm sure they're going to talk about the obelisk, yes, obelisk, to be raised at one point on high ground so it might be visible from far around, to be a guide to his native village. But the most important building he erected was a large observatory in the grounds with a great glass dome. The interior of this was so planned as to be a vast camera obscura. Here the squire could watch the country around, the people at work in the fields, and, he said, he could count the deer in the park, the sheep grazing in the meadows, as well as the travellers on the roads. Still, another of his whims was the building of a beacon tower to act as a guide for ships at sea. When he drove to London, he armed himself with pistols, and his coachman and footmen were likewise so armed, with the addition of swords as a protection against highwaymen. Truly a curious character. He instructed his executors to, executors, I beg your pardon, not executors, not executing, get executed. His executors to place his bust in Brightling Church with the motto, Untile nihil quod con honestum. And I don't know what the translation of that is, because James John Hissey assumes that you know your Latin. And there it may be seen, motto and all, in the niche of the wall. O traveller, stop, for though his bones be rotten, Fuller rests here and must not be forgotten. But in spite of his eccentricities, Fuller was a man of genius and a liberal patron of the fine arts. He invited Turner to stay at Brightling and commissioned him to paint several pictures of Sussex scenery. To this fortunate circumstance we owe the beautiful drawings of the Vale of Heathfield, Brightling from Rose Hill, View from Crowhurst, Battle Abbey, the Vale of Ashburnham, and others. In these, Turner's topography was more faithful to fact than usual because probably the natural beauty of the country pleased and sufficed him, a fact that speaks well for the charms of Sussex scenery. Topographic accuracy in drawing is scientific, not artistic. Art, said Goethe, is termed art because it is not nature. And Turner was above all an artist. He painted poems, not places. To him, the impression of the scene was the thing to strive for. He boldly confessed to having placed a town on the opposite side of the river to which it stood, because it came better so. In his fine painting of Loch Awe, he actually inserted an invented castle, as the ruins of Kilchurn existing there he did not consider rugged enough for the scene. Oh, these artists and their whims. In his view, the Llanthony Abbey in his view of Llanthony Abbey, he was even more daring than his wont, for so greatly did he romance that he created almost everything, but he secured a wonderful picture. In truth, the scene is Italian rather than Welsh. It has sometimes occurred to me that possibly this drawing, by some mischance, is wrongly entitled, and it is really of a foreign ruin. I can hardly imagine that even Turner would have romanced so unblushingly. For one act of his, honest Jack Fuller deserves to be remembered by all English men who treasure as priceless heritage the old historic buildings of their motherland. Fuller, hearing one day that the unique and beautiful ruins of Bodiam Castle were in such a danger of demolition, promptly purchased them at a price above their presumed market value, solely to preserve the venerable pile. Now, I don't know if you've been to Bodiam Castle. It is a fairy tale type castle. Let's just have a quick look and see if we can find a picture of Bodiam Castle, and you'll see what I mean. And Bodiam Castle, and he did build a watchtower, and I made a video. I'll see if I can find it actually. Bodiam Castle. Let's just have a quick look at this. You'll see what I mean. Here we go. Look at that. That is a classic. Open in new tab. Let's have a look at that. And it's I think it's National Trust now. But yes, you can imagine. Look at that. Lovely. And on the tube of views, let's just see if I put in Vobes oddball eccentrics. You can have a look at this video. Here it is. Something I knocked up some time ago, but I need to mute the audio, otherwise we'll have it. So he built this watchtower. Here's me some years ago looking at Bodiam Castle, as you can see, and I've turned the sound off obviously so you can't hear it, but he built this watchtower so he could watch, apparently, the builders restoring Bodiam Castle and make sure that they got on with the work and didn't slack. And it's a beautiful watchtower, and on the inside of it, let's have a look, it's got this spiral staircase. I think the metal version is a modern version. It would have been a wooden version. And this is me when I had 2 eyes and didn't have to wear glasses and stuff. It was some time ago. And I made this thing called Oddballs Eccentric. And I'll put the link if you want to watch it at some point. Look at me, I was a young version then, and I was on my unicycle. Those happy days of travelling across the country. And this is, it says here 12 years ago. I can't remember when I actually made it, but there it is. I'll put it in the chat. Can I put it in there? There we go. For those of you who want, it was a television. It was a television pilot. I made a pilot because I wanted to go and look at all these oddballs from history and all the eccentricities. Hello, Linda. Linda Kane has just popped in. I wanted to go and have a look at all of that sort of stuff. Anyway, so Bodiam Castle, that is, he's probably going to tell us now exactly that. Let's go back to the script here. How are we doing for time? I'm going to have to go fairly soon because I've got fires downstairs that need logs, and I've got to cook for the lovely Julia who's coming over later on. All of this you don't need to know because you just want to listen to a story, but that's what you get. So anyway, I'm just looking for the thing. If he'd done, so there we are. So in other words, he bought Bodiam Castle to preserve it. If he had done naught else than this, his name should not be forgotten. Though less known than many more famous feudal strongholds, Bodiam, standing remote amongst the wooded hills of Sussex and rising picturesquely out of its wide and lake-like moat, is of exceptional interest, as is external walls and towers are almost perfect. Well, we saw that, did we not? So that one can readily realise from a glance at them what a medieval castle looked like when it was in its prime. Well, that may not be true. Seeing the actuality quickens the imagination more than any description, poem, or picture can. And I don't suppose he took a picture of it, no. So, by the way, the pictures in this book, because this is one of the original books that was printed, has his photographs that he took as he went round. Soon after leaving the Sugarloaf, we came to the remote village of Dallington, perched on the top of the high hill. Now, what he doesn't seem to say is why the Sugarloaf is in that conical shape. And as I said, it is actually the shape of how sugar used to be packaged. It didn't come in a bag like we often get granulated sugar. It came in a solid lump in a triangle shape, and it was called a Sugarloaf. And one day he had a bet with the vicar of Dallington and said, "I can see your church spire from my country seat, from his country manor house, the window." And he was a bit drunk, and he thought he could. And the vicar said, "No, you can't." And he said, "No, I can, and I'll prove it to you." Anyway, it was dark, so they couldn't see anything that night. So he said, "Come back in a couple of days when you're passing, and I'll show you." Anyway, in the interim time, he got the builders to build what looked like a spire on the church, so that when the vicar came back, he looked out the window, and he thought he could see the top of the church. Of course, you can't actually see the church at all. And that is the story of why it was built that way. And people have lived in that. I think until the 1930s there was somebody living in it. So when he came there, I think it was deserted. But I seem to remember, and somebody can check this up, but there we are. Linda Kane says this brings back memories of readings during the lockdown. Yes, well, I thought it was about time I did another one of these, so I thoroughly enjoyed reading the others. So we're doing this on a very ad hoc basis. Anyway, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you here. So soon after leaving the Sugarloaf house, we came to the remote village of Dallington, perched on the top of a high hill, a village that has never heard the sound of a railway whistle, and where, I should imagine, a stranger never appears unless he has lost his way. Truly, we had not lost our way, for the good reason that we had no way to lose. There is positively nothing in Dallington to attract the tourist, apart from the wide views it commands over the country around, with a glimpse of the distant sea beyond. It is a sleepy, uneventful hamlet, windswept and clean, consisting of a few small houses clustered around its ancient church. Pleasing in its naturalness, primitive without being picturesque, though boasting one old half-timbered cottage that might have stepped out of a picture by Mrs. Allingham or Burkitt Foster. I assume that they are either authors or artists. Graven on the weather-worn stone high up in the church tower, we noted a quaint device of a Pelham buckle, and therein lies a bit of hidden history. A Pelham buckle. Shall we have a quick look to see what a Pelham buckle is? Now, I'm sure Linda Kane knows what it is, but there'll be many people here who think, what the hell is a Pelham buckle? Well, let's have a look. I do seem to remember vaguely the term, and I can't remember what the hell it is. Let's have a look. Pelham buckle image. Now, what I'm getting here... Oh, I've got Pelham bucket. That's no good. Buckle, the Pelham buckle. Okay, so that's a pub. Is that the Pelham buckle? Wait a minute. It could be. Where is he? Dallington. Yes, there it is. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try and get that a bit bigger for you. So the Pelham buckle is this symbol here. Now, what does that mean? I can't quite remember. Is it a satanic symbol? Is it the Freemasons? Am I allowed to say that on this channel? Probably not. let's go and have a look and see what it is in the book, and we'll find out what are these. The Pelham Buckle, and herein lies a bit of hidden history. During former wanderings in Sussex, I frequently came upon this noticeable device prominently displayed on various buildings and was puzzled as to its significance. Eventually, however, I discovered that it was the badge of that valiant knight, Sir John Pelham, who made prisoner the King of France at the Battle of, now I'm never going to pronounce this correct, Poictiers, a badge being intended to represent the sword belt buckle of the captured king. After the event, on any church he found or aided in the building, or on any house he erected, or even on a wayside bridge here and there, this Sir John Pelham caused his badge to be engraved. He was a brave warrior, therefore this little weakness of his may perhaps be pardoned, for it was an age when men gloried to proclaim their doughty deeds, and you must judge a man by the age in which he lived, so sculptured stones have oftentimes tales to tell. Many a quaint bit of carving on an old building has aroused my curiosity and caused me to make inquiries as to its hidden meaning. By doing so, I frequently unearth some interesting detail of long-forgotten history, or perchance an ancient family tradition, or some strange superstition of past days. Many curious bits of carving and perplexing inscriptions greet the wayfarer's observant eye. Their purport lost in the mists of antiquity, only to be recovered by much diligent research, and not always then. Of these, the Pelham Buckle is an interesting example. So there we are. If you're out and about and you're looking at church and you see one of these, the Pelham Buckle, there you know, Sir John Pelham. For the unfettered folk of the period, symbols or stories carved in stone were their only reading. Nor was this reading always serious, for the jovial monks of old joked in stone and made merry in wood, so pointedly that their intent was and is manifest to the dullest of observer. I fancy those medieval monks loved a joke better than a sermon. I bet they did. Time has not lessened the meaning or the mirthiness of their ancient jests, for they are ever fresh. Their comicalities live and force a smile even when the heart is sad. I'm just looking to see. Oh, we're nearly at the end of chapter 2, so we'll go to the end. Just pull out some ear bogies. Dallington will always be presently remembered by us on account of the glorious view we enjoyed, southward, from its elevated churchyard, a view striking in its rolling extent and changeful outline of wooded hill and rounded down, a prospect varied and vast, bounded to the extreme right by the bold promontory of Beachy Head, and to the left by the heights beyond Hastings, with a long stretch of silvery sea between. How space-expressing it was to look over those leagues of green landscape fading into the blue sea, and the sea in turn fading into the bluer sky. No chemtrails then. I know no finer view in all Sussex, that land of scenic revelations. It seems strange to me how little the rural beauties of this sunny southern county are known or appreciated. Possibly because mostly lie, the best of them, that is, out on the beaten track and are reached by roads that lead to nowhere in particular, and possibly because there is nothing sensational or exciting about them, nothing that would appeal to the average tourist. Sussex scenery, too, frequently lacks the enlivening presence of water, but here water was galore, for we had the spacious sea. Sussex beyond the railways is a wooded hills, its heather-clad heights, its breezy gorse-clad wastes, its dreamy valleys, and the green goodness of its wide weald. What a home-like, lovable land it is! If only it wasn't highly populated now and ruined by so many roads left, right and centre and these new builds encroaching every bit, it would be quite lovely. And this is why I think it's so important to read these old books, because it reminds us that in 100 years, in 100 years out of all the many thousands, how much we have unfortunately developed in this beautiful landscape. How little they know of Sussex who only know its fringe of fashionable seaside resorts, the sea coast vulgarised. Well, you may say that in 1910 that the sea was vulgarised with its Edwardian and Victorian houses that were going up. And of course, you know, if he's around at the end of the Victorian era, as he was, and he's looking at all these thalidomines or whatever they are, and the new building that was going up everywhere, including my house that I am broadcasting from, a 2-up, 2-down Victorian house on a terrace, you know, not a very humble abode, and he was seeing all this brickwork and all of that, in the same way that H.G. Wells looked at all these thalidomines, these tripods, when he wrote War of the Worlds, and he talked about the tripods everywhere. He was in Woking at the time, of course, and he saw the tripods, and he thought, well, imagine those bigger than houses with aliens inside them, and that's where the tripods came from. I remember reading and doing some research about old H.G. Wells and how he wrote that book, but that was some time ago. Anyway, now, you know, we see how vulgarised the coastal towns have been, not even keeping to that rather charming coastal look with these modern buildings that could be in any urban city, inner London type buildings that are here on the coast. I mean, it is a huge shame. Anyway, enough of my pontification, back to the book. Dallington, isolated among the hills, world forgetting and world unknown, is as drowsy as a village may be, and therein lies its charm, though probably the Philistines would declare it to be a desolation of dullness. I like that, a desolation of dullness. Well, these days, walk round a new build site, one of these new, you know, up-and-coming 15-minute cities, and there you'll find the dullness, a desolation of dullness, mean little windows, no embellishments whatsoever, identikit houses. That is the real desolation of dullness, and he would be rocking in his grave if he could see it. A village where nothing special ever seems to happen, and possibly never has happened. How could it, set high and dry as it is, out of the march of man? I should imagine the only activity it knows, or has known during the long centuries past, is the gathering together of its worshippers on Sundays, a happy relief from the monotony of weekdays, though the country folk dressed in their solemn best never seem quite at ease, and certainly lack the pleasing picturesqueness of their workaday clothes. Why, I wonder, should the odour of sanctity be so associated with dismal black apparel? And the Victorians were very good at the black, weren't they? The Victorians were very sombre. They brought in that very sombreness and all of that, which is a real shame. Hello to Georgia's vintage world. It's good at times to escape from towns and come to see such quiet spots as Dallington, where the wheels of time seem slowed, and a past tranquillity, so rare to find in this striving modern day, reigns undisturbed, where, moreover, the worrying outer world that is in such constant touch with us appears so far removed to the senses, if not in measured miles. Remoteness is a quality that depends not on mere distance. Such spots make peaceful memories that may be recalled with a feeling of deep refreshment when amidst the weary of the busy city's ceaseless toil and traffic. Stevenson says, "It's an odd thing how happily two people can live in a place where they have no acquaintance." I should have read that with a Scottish accent, of course. "Ach, either knew. It's an odd thing how happily two people can live in a place where they have no acquaintance." You're doomed, Captain Mannering. And Dallington appears to me eminently suitable for such a retired existence of two, where they could just see where they could where they could just see so much humanity as to keep them from a desire of seeing more. Yet to some prolonged quiet breeds unquietness. I should like to buy that view from the churchyard of Dallington and take it to my home and enjoy at my leisure. I have travelled by road for many hundreds of miles without seeing anything fairer or finer. And there endeth chapter 2. And there endeth us. But I will just quickly have a look at Dallington, see if we can get a picture of Dallington Church for you before we head off. The Charm of the Road by James John Hissey. Marvellous stuff. Let's quickly find Dallington on the maps before we go. Let me have a look and see if I can bring that to you. So there we were at the Sugarloaf, and I just need my keyboard again. Sorry about the noises off. Dallington. And here it is, just to give you a bit of idea. So we started at Eastbourne and we've weaved our way up here to Dallington. And you can see Tunbridge Wells is just up here, Uckfield over there. But we are in Dallington, so let's go in and find the church. And now we can see that there's, you can walk through Dallington. There's a lot more houses than he said. Let's just have a look at the ground. So we've got some Victorian type houses here. Look at this. We'll stroll up here. These are nice. I wonder if some of these, oh, look at that. It's got White Cottage, Dallington. Look at that. Lovely. Some of these may have been timber framed houses originally with new frontages. And of course, the further you go, we'll get into more modern houses. Look at that brick and what have you. But let's go back to the church down here. No white lines, yellow lines and all of that. Quite narrow road, notice. That there must have been a timber frame. Look at that. Timber framed house with those little windows. Still leaded, look at that. But all infilled now with hung tiles. Thatched roof gone. All of those sort of goodies. I turn my microphone, you'll be able to hear me. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back in there. Where's the church? Here's the church. On the other side. And there it is. Now, funnily enough, that's the steeple that he said, Mad Jack Fuller said he could see. And if you can see, it's actually, I think it's six-sided. The Sugarloaf, as we saw, is conical and round and smooth, but I guess from a distance it wouldn't have mattered. We can't see the church as such. Is there any other pictures of it? It looks a very nice church. I think he was a little bit, there's a few houses there. Goes down this little hill here. Let's have a look down here. But it's the view. I want to see the view. Let's see if we can find that view that he's talking about. So it's on a ridge. Let's just quickly see if we can find... Here we go. We might get a sense of the view. Don't know if that's looking south or north. A little bit more. Can we see over the hedge? I think that is... that's looking north. That's looking south. So I don't know where the view's gone. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, we've moved away from Dallington proper. Let's just reset that. There we go. And there's what looks like, what's that? Look at that, big country pile. I bet you can't go in there. No, can't go in there. But you can get to the entrance of it. Look at that. With a nice formal garden and a swimming pool, tennis courts. Lovely. Lovely if you've got the money. Anyway, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed that. That's chapter 2. Thank you very much for watching. I will be back on an ad hoc basis as and when I can slip in the time. The Charm of the Road, James John Hissey, 1910 published, and we're looking at really how things have changed. In the countryside of Sussex, not a lot has changed, although You know, who knows where that house is? I'd love to know where that is and what it is. At Dallington, maybe we'll set off from there next time and I'll do a bit of research. Who knows? But until next time, thank you so much. Look after yourselves, and I will catch up with you soon. Toodle pip.